Welcome to Slow Night, Ancient Tales. As the busy world outside quiets down, it's time to leave the heavy burdens of the day behind. Here we journey back in time through the timeless classic literature of Korea. So, find a comfortable spot, close your eyes, and let these ancient whispers guide you into a peaceful sleep. Let's begin. The Envoy Who Never Returned. Author Kim Dong-in, published in the July 1936 issue of Yadam. Another one. It looks like this is already the fourth one this year. It seems so. It was a booming laugh that rattled the roof ridges. Foolish wretches, what did they come here for? Looking down from the pavilion at the man lying dead on the main road, struck by an arrow, the figure laughed heartily. Although his laughter was bold and loud, a profound sense of loneliness was hidden beneath it. Though he seemed close to 70, his ruddy and vibrant complexion, his upright posture, and his booming voice showed more than enough vigor to surpass any young man. Will another royal envoy come again? They will. As long as the royal seal is in my hands, they will keep coming. The envoys are to be pitied. It cannot be helped. This was Taejo Yi Songye, the founder of the Yi Dynasty of Joseon, who had returned to stay at the Hamheung royal villa. His current rank was Taesangwang, Grand King Emeritus. It had already been several years since the Grand King Emeritus passed the throne to his eldest surviving son, Bang Gwa, and retreated to this Hamheung royal villa. King Jeongjong, who had received the throne then, had already abdicated. Now, a few more years had passed since Bang Won, the fifth son of the Grand King Emeritus and the younger brother of King Jeongjong, now King Emeritus, ascended the throne. On the surface, it appeared that the Grand King Emeritus was living a leisurely life in Hamheung, completely detached from the affairs of the state. However, beneath the surface, there were complicated circumstances. Whenever an envoy arrived from the king in Seoul to pay respects to the Grand King Emeritus in Hamheung, the old king would not even meet them. He would shoot every approaching envoy dead with an arrow from afar. The arrows of the Grand King Emeritus, renowned as a master archer since his days serving the former Joseon Dynasty, had already claimed the lives of dozens of royal envoys without him ever granting them an audience. The royal seal was naturally something the reigning king should possess, yet the Grand King Emeritus still held on to it himself, refusing to hand it over to his son. In other words, although King Jeongjong and subsequently King Taejo ascended to the throne, the royal seal, the ultimate proof of kingship, remained in the hands of the Grand King Emeritus. The kind-hearted King Emeritus Jeongjong had spent 2 years ruling without the seal, but the ambitious and driven current king, Taejong, could not be satisfied with an empty title. He continuously sent royal envoys to his father in Hamheung to pay respects and subtly demand the royal seal. These envoys made it to Hamheung, but none returned alive. All became pitiful spirits beneath the Grand King Emeritus's arrows. The royal seal had been bestowed by the Ming Dynasty. The Grand King Emeritus possessed a bold and uninhibited spirit. Ha! With a hearty laugh, unfitting for a 70-year-old man, he seemed to look down upon the world without a single care. But deep within his heart lay a profound anxiety that others could not fathom. He had overturned the crumbling Goryeo dynasty and established the grand enterprise of Joseon. But what if a flaw appeared in this enterprise? This newly founded nation had not yet fully stabilized. If there was even the slightest misstep at its departure, there was no telling what disasters it might invite in the future. The very first steps had to be perfect. Yet, a dark shadow had already fallen over the beginning of the Yi family's dynasty. Looking back, it happened during his reign. Grand Prince Jinan, King Jeongjong, Grand Prince Egon, Grand Prince Huyen, King Taejong, and Grand Prince Daeogun. These 6 princes were born to his first wife, Queen Han. Grand Prince Muan and Grand Prince Wien, these 2 were born to his second wife, Queen Kang. Though he was the supreme ruler of the nation with 8 princes, he had suffered a very unpleasant and tragic family ordeal. His first wife, Queen Han, passed away when he was merely a military general before he founded Joseon. His second wife, Queen Kang, was a woman of extraordinary, unmatched beauty. The Grand King Emeritus loved Queen Kang deeply. Consequently, he also deeply favored the 2 princes she bore, Bang Beon, Grand Prince Muan, and Bang Sok, Grand Prince Yuan. It was natural to cherish the children of his beloved, especially since they were still so young. However, Queen Kang favored ministers like Jong Do-jeon and Nam Un, and the sons of the first queen, including Bang Won, viewed this exceptional affection with different intentions. Queen Kang and ministers like Jong and Nam took advantage of the king's deep love for her two sons and began a campaign to have Bang Seok, her offspring, appointed as the crown prince. While this secret plot was underway, the one who quickly caught wind of it was the fifth prince born to the first queen, Bang Won, later King Taejo. Bang Won was a man of fiery temper, immense ambition, and overwhelming drive. When it came to the founding of Joseon, his contributions arguably exceeded even those of his father, King Taejo. During the Goryeo era, whenever his father, then Chancellor Yi, hesitated, it was Bang Won who encouraged and pushed him until the grand enterprise of founding the new nation was finally achieved. He was the #1 contributor to the founding. It was Bang Won who, pushing his hesitant father forward, assassinated the Goryeo loyalist Jong Mong-ju at the Seonjukyo Bridge. It was also Bang Won who backed his reluctant father and made him ascend the throne at Suchanggung Palace. Because he held the greatest merit in the founding of Joseon, he firmly believed that once his father retired, he would naturally inherit the throne. Even though he hadn't been formally appointed, he considered himself the de facto crown prince. But when he sensed a secret plot forming around his half-brother Bang Seok, he could not simply overlook it. Thus, at the very dawn of the new dynasty, the ominous tragedy of royal family members slaughtering one another occurred. Leading a few supportive ministers and generals, Bang Won killed the opposing faction of Jong Do-jeon and Nam Un, and went on to murder his half-brothers Bang Beon and Bang Seok. This was known as the Rebellion of Bang Seok. This tragedy at the very beginning of the nation brought a great realization to King Taejo. To ensure the 10,000-year future of the dynasty, a strict order of succession had to be established. The throne must pass to the king's eldest son. If the eldest son died early, it should pass to the eldest grandson. Only if there was no eldest grandson should the order fall to the next eldest son. Without setting this ironclad rule, the descendants of the Yi family would face endless bloodshed over the throne. Since kings are human, how could they not have favorite and less favored children among many sons? And since princes are human, there is no guarantee the eldest will always have the most merit while the youngest has the least. However, transcending personal affection and disregarding the degree of merit, there was a desperate need to establish a strict rule that the throne is inherited strictly by birth order. Thus, King Taejo hastily passed the throne to Bang Gwa, his eldest surviving son, and retreated to Gaeseong, and then further away to Hamheung. Yet, what still weighed heavily on his mind and kept him from finding peace was the immense ambition and drive of his fifth son, Bang Won. Even when abdicating and leaving for Hamheung as the king emeritus, this worry remained. He quietly summoned Bang Won. "Help the new king. The current king is too kind to protect a throne that has not yet stabilized. You must help him. There is no one else capable of doing so." What was Bang Won's answer then? "Yes," he replied, but his expression was visibly full of dissatisfaction. His attitude seemed to say, "If my brother lacks the ability to protect this nation, why didn't you give it to me?" The king emeritus saw this. He saw it and shuddered inwardly. It was only after the king emeritus arrived in Hamheung that it became known he had taken the royal seal with him instead of handing it over to the new king. He had taken the seal. Naturally, upon abdicating, it should have been passed to the new king, but he kept it. Without the seal, a formal abdication decree cannot be issued. The king emeritus was deeply concerned that, although he had passed the throne to the new king would not be able to abdicate freely. He foresaw that once he left for Hamheung, Bang Won would inevitably pressure the kind-hearted king into naming him the royal heir, and eventually force him to abdicate. By taking the seal, the king emeritus intended to prevent such freedom and protect the new king. However, this plan also fell apart. He had forgotten that while a formal abdication decree couldn't be forged without the seal, the actual seizure of power could happen regardless. As soon as the king emeritus left for Hamheung, royal envoys from Seoul followed closely behind. They reported that Bang Won had been appointed as the royal heir brother. The king emeritus flew into a rage. "I know of no such crown prince. Doesn't His Majesty have his own royal heir?" Following this, an envoy arrived requesting the royal seal to stamp the state decree appointing the royal heir brother. "I do not know. I refuse. I acknowledge no such royal heir brother." The king emeritus held his ground, but at that moment he clearly realized there will undoubtedly be endless bloodshed over the succession of the throne for generations to come. A year later, an envoy arrived at the Hamheung royal villa reporting that the king had abdicated and the royal heir brother, Bang Won, had ascended the throne. Even without the royal seal, the throne had changed hands. The former king emeritus was now elevated to the title of Grand King Emeritus. The former king became the king emeritus, and Bang Won became the new king. Holding on to a royal seal that had become no more than a useless trinket, the Grand King Emeritus finally exploded in fury over the situation. Judging by his merit, character, or any other measure, the new king lacked nothing to be a monarch. However, looking at the long-term eternal strategy for the Yi family, this chilling precedent made the Grand King Emeritus so utterly disgusted that he could not even eat his meals properly for a while after receiving the report. "Wicked! Wicked!" he would mutter in displeasure, spitting on the ground in disgust. From then on, the infamous Envoy to Hamheung Chasa incidents began. Unable to look favorably upon this disloyal, unfilial, and unbrotherly new king, the Grand King Emeritus refused to acknowledge him as the sovereign. The new king, having taken over the throne, needed to officially solidify his position, which required bringing back the royal seal. Therefore, he continuously sent envoys to the Grand King Emeritus in Hamheung. But the Grand King Emeritus never once met with them. If he spotted a group riding horses from afar and suspected they were envoys from Seoul, he used the bow kept by his side to shoot them down before they even reached the palace gates. Ha! Every time he shot down an envoy, the Grand King Emeritus would mask his true feelings with a hearty laugh in front of his attendants, but the volatile heart of the nearly 70-year-old man was in deep agony. Another one. Yet the king in Seoul, as if competing with his father, kept sending envoys endlessly, knowing they would never return. He still doesn't know how to repent. The Yi Dynasty will not last long either. When lying in bed, lone, thinking of the affairs in distant Seoul, or recalling the exhilarating enterprise of the past years, tears would endlessly flow from the eyes of this old hero. It brought him an even deeper sense of desolation and displeasure to see his attendants, ignorant of his profound anguish, foolishly rejoicing as loyal subjects of the one higher than the king every time an envoy was killed. Amidst this, the years passed, 1 year, then another. To the Grand King Emeritus, the new king was still his biological son. How could there be no fatherly affection? Moreover, as the primary contributor to the founding of Joseon, how could he completely lack trust in him? However, drawing on the vast experience gained from a long life in this world and looking toward a greater purpose beyond personal affection or loyalty, he could not help but view the son he didn't hate with contempt and reprimand the son he didn't despise. Since every envoy sent ended up inciting the Grand King Emeritus's wrath and meeting a tragic end, the king gave it more thought. Paying closer attention to the selection of the envoy, he chose Song Sok-rin, who had been a close friend of the Grand King Emeritus since their days serving the Joseon Dynasty. Because of this old friendship, Song Sok-rin avoided becoming a lonely ghost at the tip of an arrow, but he failed to soften the old king's heart. Between the royal palace in Seoul and the Hamheung villa, the tragic cycle of envoys leaving on a journey of no return repeated endlessly as days, months, and years passed. Baksun. Watching these continuous tragic events unfold between the Grand King Emeritus and the king, the old minister could not just stand by. He volunteered to the king to go to Hamheung as an envoy. He knew very well that 9 times out of 10 he would not return alive. Yet, out of true loyalty to the king and the country, he forced his way to get the king's permission to perform the final service of his old life and set off for Hamheung. Traveling by land and water, he finally reached Hamheung. When the temporary royal residence came into view in the distance, Baksun left all his servants behind. He personally led a mare and its foal toward the residence. Looking ahead, he saw a few figures conversing in a pavilion at the residence. The central figure was unmistakably his old friend, the man he had served as a colleague in the former dynasty, the man he had joined forces with to pioneer this new nation, and the man to whom he had unswervingly devoted his deepest respect, first as king, then as King Emeritus, and now as Grand King Emeritus. The residents seemed to have spotted Baksun as well. Discovering the procession of a high-ranking official, a rare sight in these parts, everyone's attention was fixed on him. Seeing this, Baksun tied the foal he had been leading to a tree by the road. Then, leading only the mare, he traced his way toward the main gate. "Your Majesty," kneeling before his old friend for the first time in years, Baksun's words choked in his throat. Only the cry of "Your Majesty" escaped. Tears poured down like rain. Just then, a bizarre noise came from the distance. Turning back, it was the sorrowful whinny of the foal left on the road, calling for its mother. The mare, tied in the courtyard, seemingly anxious at her baby's desperate cries, constantly twitched her ears, pawed the ground, and stirred restlessly. "How did you make such a long journey?" The Grand King Emeritus's voice was gentle toward his old friend. "Yes, Your Majesty. It has been 45 years since I last attended you." He could not continue speaking. As the sorrowful cries of the foal and the mare grew increasingly frantic, it felt as though an untimely war had broken out at the residence. "What is that noise?" the Grand King Emeritus asked his attendants due to the overwhelming commotion. Baksun answered instead. "Your Majesty, it's my fault. I left the foal I was leading on the road, and it seems the baby is looking for its mother, and the mother is looking for her baby, hence the clamor. Even for humble beasts, the bond between mother and child seems no different from that of humans." Glancing up, Baksun caught a fleeting frown on the Grand King Emeritus's face. Simultaneously, a look of profound sorrow swept across his royal countenance. Baksun stayed at the residence for several days. However, this seasoned diplomat never once directly asked the Grand King Emeritus to view the new king with leniency. Instead, whenever the opportunity arose, he spoke indirectly, merely hinting that the bond of affection between a parent and child could never truly be severed. In his heart, the Grand King Emeritus did not truly hate the new king. He was an old man of 70. Out of the 8 princes born to his 2 queens, the eldest, Grand Prince Jinan, had died before he took the throne. Grand Princes Huyan, Muan, and Uyan had all perished in political tragedies. Since this son was one of the very few remaining, there was no reason to hate him. He merely found it ungraceful that the son had ascended the throne without following the proper order. While Baksun was staying there, the Grand King Emeritus tried to avoid being alone with him as much as possible. It was painful to face this old friend. He hesitated deeply over which path to choose when human emotion and absolute principles clashed. A few days later, Baksun set out on his return journey. By then, Baksun could see that the Grand King Emeritus's heart had softened considerably. Having turned his heart this much, Baksun felt confident that if just one more person came and pleaded for his return, the old king would readily agree. When Baksun bowed and took his leave in the courtyard, the Grand King Emeritus sent him off with a heavy heart. "We are both old now. Who knows when we shall meet again? May your Majesty enjoy 10,000 years of health. Since I am already frail and old, I have no choice but to go to the Yellow Springs, the afterlife, before you." These 2 old men, who once held hands and worked together as friends in the Joseon Dynasty, exchanged their final farewells as lord and subject. Neither the Grand King Emeritus nor Baksun realized that this would truly be their final parting. As soon as Baksun disappeared outside the residence, the Grand King Emeritus's attendants unanimously begged for permission to kill him. Ignorant of the deep, complicated reasons why the Grand King Emeritus had killed the previous envoys, and only recognizing the simple fact that royal envoys are killed, the attendants clamored to kill Baksun to earn merit for themselves. Having just sent Baksun away with a sorrowful heart, the Grand King Emeritus was deeply troubled by this request. To retract a law he had established without a valid reason would compromise royal authority. Yet he absolutely did not want to kill this particular old friend. "Who will go?" he asked, questioning who would step up to kill Bak's son. "I will. I will go." He looked pitifully at his attendants, who were practically jumping at the chance to earn merit. They pestered him relentlessly. After being worn down, he inevitably had to grant permission. However, calculating the time, he figured Bak's son would have had more than enough time to cross the Yonghong River by now. "If he has already crossed the river, leave him be," he ordered as he handed a sword to the messenger, praying in his heart. "Old friend, please cross the river safely." But Bak's son had not yet crossed. He had suddenly fallen ill on the road, delaying his journey. By the time the messenger carrying the sword caught up to him, Bak's son was just moving his feet to board the ferry. When the messenger returned singing a song of triumph, reporting to the Grand King Emeritus that Bak's son was half in the river, half on the boat, the Grand King Emeritus hid his expression from his subjects, but immediately retreated to a secluded room and wept. He wailed bitterly over the bizarre fate that forced him to kill, with his own hands, a friend with whom he had shared joys and sorrows for so many years. However, Bak's son's death was not in vain. It was through Bak's son's death that the Grand King Emeritus finally resolved to return to the capital. First, despite his resentment, he wanted to see the regal bearing of the new king, who was the most outstanding among all his princes. Second, he wanted to observe firsthand from Seoul, the political center, just how well the enterprise he had built was settling into place. Third, he wanted to pacify the spirit of his old friend by doing so. With these various reasons in mind, he internally decided to return to the capital as soon as a plausible excuse presented itself. It was precisely at this time that the great monk Muhak arrived at the Hamheung residence on royal orders. Early in the founding of the dynasty, when the site for the capital was undecided, King Taejo had tasked Muhak, a high monk cultivating his spirit in a humble hut on Mount Godal, with selecting the land. After surveying various terrains, Muhak chose Hanyang, stating, "With Mount Inwang as the center, Mount Begak and Mount Namsan will serve as the left and right guardian dragons and tigers." Having trusted Muhak deeply ever since establishing the capital in Hanyang based on his advice, the king sent him as an envoy to the Grand King Emeritus. The Grand King Emeritus welcomed the unexpected visit from the great monk Muhak with joy. Yet, even as he welcomed him, his first words were, "Have you also come to persuade me, great monk?" Muhak smiled warmly in response. "I have known your majesty for decades. I came merely to offer a bit of distraction to your majesty, who is living in quiet seclusion." During his stay of several dozen days at the residence, Muhak only pointed out the flaws of the new king to the Grand King Emeritus. He would say, "This is the king's fault, and that is also the king's mistake," bringing up only his shortcomings. All the while, he closely observed the Grand King Emeritus's reactions. As a result, Muhak discovered that the Grand King Emeritus did not actually enjoy hearing only criticisms of the new king. After observing this for dozens of days, Muhak seized a quiet moment one evening, knelt before the Grand King Emeritus, and pleaded, "Your Majesty, the enterprise you established is currently in peril. If you do not correct it now, this poor monk fears that the great nation you poured your life into building will crumble into nothing." "Great monk, what do you mean?" In response to this question, Muhak shed tears and pleaded, "Your Majesty, this poor monk knows well the grave sins the current king has committed. But do you not see? All of your Majesty's other princes have passed, and only this one remains. His Majesty King Gongjong has no legitimate heirs, and Grand Prince Igan is not known for his brilliance. Is this king not the only one left? If you abandon him as well, to whom will you entrust the great enterprise you suffered your whole life to build? Rather than handing this grand nation over to another family name, is it not right to pass it to your own blood, even if you resent him? The dynasty has been established, but its foundations are not yet secure. I beg your Majesty to reconsider." To Muhak's loyal admonition, the Grand King Emeritus gave no reply. He merely sat quietly with his eyes firmly closed. However, since he had already made up his mind internally to return to the capital, he used Muhak's plea as the perfect opportunity to finally return to Hanyang, the city he had left so long ago. When Muhak continued to urge him over the following days, he seemingly gave in, ordering his attendants to prepare the royal procession for the return journey. Thus, carrying the royal seal on Horde, his person to hand it down to his son, the king, the Grand King Emeritus left the Hamheung royal villa with the great monk Muhak and returned to Hanyang. The night in Hamheung, deeply intertwined with King Taejo Yi Songge's profound agony, the old loyal subject Baksun's pure sincerity, and the great monk Muhak's quiet wisdom, fades away as they head back toward Hanyang. Even the hero who once commanded the world, and the bitter, biting winds that blew toward the throne, have all ultimately settled into a quiet page of history within the flow of time. I hope that all the large and small winds that blew in your hearts today will calm down smoothly along with the silence of this night. Leave the heavy burdens you carry on your shoulders in history for a moment, and now, fill this night with your most comfortable and even breaths. You've worked hard today. I hope you have peaceful and warm dreams tonight as well. Sleep well and have a good night.